The iPhone 5 was launched all the way back in 2012 and was the last iPhone to come with the classic skeuomorphic iOS design. It brought a bigger screen and all new body, one so good that it was reused in 2013 with the iPhone 5S and then again in 2016 with the iPhone SE. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're taking a look at the iPhone 5. How does it hold up in 2020? The iPhone 5 improved a lot over the iPhone 4S. It was taller, which made it a much more natural fit in the hand and made the aspect ratio 16:9, which was a necessary move. The iPhone 5 switched to aluminum, but it still had an amazingly premium design. Again, it was reused in 2013 and 2016 with the iPhone 5S and SE. But perhaps the most important improvement over the 4S is the one on the inside. The doubling of the RAM from 512 megabytes to 1 gigabyte. Basically, it got a whole lot faster and a whole lot more capable. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. Obviously, the iPhone 5's been around for like 8 years. It's not going to hold up the best in 2020. It's stuck on late 2017 software with iOS 10 and is limited in what apps it can download. It isn't fast anymore either, although I do find it to be mostly livable on iOS 10. The camera is very mediocre now. The battery life in most of these phones is shot after years of use, but this phone set up 2 other great iPhones for success, so I do think it's worth talking about some of the history of this phone as well. It's the last one with a lot of input from Steve Jobs, and the last one to come with the old iOS design with iOS 6. The nostalgia is real with iOS 6. It looks so fantastic on this phone, and I'm lucky to own one with it in such great condition, although the battery life barely lasts 20 minutes. iOS 6 is so snappy on here. Obviously, anything internet related or newer isn't going to be great, but that's expected. This truly is a relic of another time in smartphone history, but we should probably back up here and start with the design of the iPhone 5. And man, is this a beautiful phone. I recently did a video on the best iPhone designs of all time, and without giving anything away, this phone was pretty high on the list. It's fairly small compared to phones now with only a 4-inch display, but it fits perfectly in the hand, and it's nice to be able to reach all 4 corners of the screen with my thumb. Plus, it isn't that much smaller than the $400 iPhone SE Apple is now selling. The phone is aluminum with glass antenna bands, and it's so classy. We did only have 2 colors, black and slate and silver. The black and slate never made a return in any newer products. Unfortunately, the finish wasn't very durable, and as a result, most of the phones nowadays are chipped to oblivion. But when you find one that's been in a case its whole life like this one, man, it's hard not to love. I really wish they had made the color work, although in all fairness, the space gray introduced with the 5S looks fantastic as well. The iPhone 5 is fairly boxy and is able to stand up on its own, which as someone who spends way too much time filming smartphones, I really appreciate. This design actually remains the lightest iPhone ever, although it's not the thinnest. This phone with a thick case like an OtterBox tends to feel like a brick in the hand. On the bottom of the phone we have a lightning port and headphone jack. Both of these ports were actually new changes. The lightning port was a huge improvement over the 30-pin adapters on the 4S, being smaller and reversible. How many times did you try plugging in one of those old chargers the wrong way? I know I did way too often. The headphone jack had always been on the top of iPhones before this. I'd certainly prefer to have it moved over removed, but unfortunately we all know what was destined to happen. We have the old home button here. This wasn't the last iPhone to have this. The 5C was, but the 5S did replace it with Touch ID the next year. This is definitely an annoying aspect of this phone if you're somehow still using it today. If you want security, you're going to have to put in a passcode every single time instead of just using your thumb. Before, I did mention how batteries are shot now, which makes sense considering that they have a very small 1440 mAh battery. Batteries degrade over time, and the iPhone 5 never had a great one in the first place, so the experience 8 years later is going to be rough. If for whatever reason you're still using this phone, you're definitely keeping a charger nearby. Hey, at least that charger is lightning. Let's take a look at the camera. It was fairly unimproved over the 4S, which had been a big jump. It is 8 megapixels and can film in 1080p. Photos nowadays are very meh and often blown out or blurry, but in the right conditions with outdoor lighting and maybe focused on something naturally photogenic like a flower, and you can get some pretty impressive shots. For 2012, this was top of the line, and it's pretty amazing that it's not drastically far off from what we have today. Video in 1080p isn't good, plain and simple. It's not really that bad, but again, it isn't good. Great for 2012 though, and it does the job. The selfie camera is pretty garbage, but not out of place in 2012. It has 1.2 megapixels and took selfies. Not good ones, but it worked. The hardware in the iPhone 5 was a huge jump over what we had seen with the iPhone 4S, and it's one of the reasons it had such a long, smooth life. iOS 6 to iOS 10 is about 5 years of support, and that's nothing to scoff at. And unlike the 4S, the iPhone 5 was actually fairly smooth on each of its iOS versions. The A6 chipset was really good, but it was also the last 32-bit processor Apple would make, so it hasn't aged the best. But still, it runs iOS 10 like a champ. Well, maybe champ is a bit strong, maybe more like the guy who finished middle of the pack. Sure, he wasn't first, but at least he wasn't last. In this case, the 4S definitely came last. It performs terribly on iOS 9, and it's nice to see the 5 at least held up better. As for app support, we do still have current or close to current versions of most apps. iOS 10 or iOS 11 are the most common and minimum supported versions at the moment, so if you aren't getting the most recent update, you're probably at least close. That's only going to get worse from here though, and with the release of iOS 14 later this year, it is just going to feel more and more obsolete. But that's just kind of how technology works, and it's nice to see the iPhone 5 did so well for so long. I'd imagine most users of the iPhone 5 loved their phone, and that's why the first iPhone SE did so well. It looked the same but improved on everything else. What wasn't to like? Well, I guess maybe the small size for some, but not everyone falls into that camp. The iPhone 5 was a terrific phone, and still today is highly regarded in the tech community as being one of the best smartphones of all time. It's one of the last pieces of Steve Jobs, and I think that alone should explain the importance of this smartphone. Sure, in a sense, it's just another iPhone, but I'd also argue it is so much more than that. It brought true innovation in the new design and upgraded internals, and set up Apple to make multiple more phones with the same general look. Was it the best iPhone of all time? I don't think so, but I do think it's up there. But what do you think of the iPhone 5? Did you ever have one? Do you still have one? Let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason. And with that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91tech, and I will see you all next time.